All right, Zach, we are going to go to the segment that I've been looking forward to um, for a long time, for the last couple of weeks, I would say. And that is the midseason awards that we have coming up. We are going to give our MVP, our coach of the year, our offensive player of the year, our defensive player of the year, and our Super Bowl favorite. So, Zach, I'm going to let you choose which category should we start with first.
Yeah, well, I know it's halfway into the season, so usually we do this segment right around this time of year, because we have a pretty relatively big sample size. And I will say, I had trouble with a lot of these. Like, I don't really,
Yeah, me
I
too.
think there are many options for a lot of them: MVP, Coach of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year in particular. So I'm just going to go with the category that I feel the most confident in, and that's Super Bowl favorite. It's the team that's won the last two Super Bowls, the team that we've spoken a lot about already on this show. It's the Chiefs. Like, this team hasn't lost a game since Christmas of last year against the Raiders. They've won the last two Super Bowl championships. I think they got a lot better at the deadline. Another move they made I didn't bring up, I like the addition of Josh Uche from the Patriots. I think that's a good rotational pass rusher that could help with this team, because they've suffered some injuries on the defensive side of the ball as well. But we know with McDuffie and Chris Jones, Karlaftis has really come on lately. Their defense is still very good until they at least lose a game. And even if they do in the regular season, they'll still be the Super Bowl favorite for me. And I think, like, well, let me ask you this. This is a topic we haven't really spoke about yet. Can this team go undefeated? They're halfway there. They have a couple of tough games in the second half of the season, on the road at Buffalo, on the road at Pittsburgh. They host Houston. But if they win that Buffalo game, I think the conversations are really going to begin. It's obviously not likely, but do you think it's possible for Kansas City to enter the playoffs with the perfect regular season?
It's possible, obviously. They find ways to win games, and that's what they're riding right now, and that has always been what they rode. Is a championship pedigree. And their games is always close, and they always seem to get the benefit of the doubt, sometimes the benefit of the whistle. So it's definitely a possibility. And I think that Buffalo game is the game that is being circled, right? And I think Buffalo has every reason to want to win that game, considering what happened not only last year, but a couple times in the playoffs. So they're going to get Buffalo's best shot there. I think that's where, if any loss comes, it's definitely that game. But the question I will flip your way, Zach, is do you even want to chase history when you just want to get healthy and play and win when it matters the most? Because I'm not sure if you want to chase history with all the injuries we see going on in the NFL this year, that you will want to risk that.
I mean, if they clinch the 1 seed with 3 weeks left, then yeah, I would rest starters and I wouldn't prioritize it. But as long as you have something to play for, then you're going to go all out and win. The thing about that Buffalo game too is the Bills have really dominated the regular season series. The last few regular seasons, Buffalo has won. It hasn't really mattered in the playoffs, but I think that's how I would approach it, Lil. Like, until you clinch the 1 seed, you got to go all out and win every game. And once you do, then we'll have that conversation.
Yeah. I'm going to give you my team, my Super Bowl favorite right now. And I think there's 3 horsemen here that you can go and choose from. But I'm going to go with the Lions here. I'm going to go with the Lions. Like I said before a couple weeks ago, this team looked like they're on a mission. I get that vibe. I get that Boston Celtic, we on a mission vibe over there in Detroit. And Jared Goff has been playing really good. Obviously, he may come up in the MVP discussions. We'll find out. But his elevation, before there was 2 things that you could have done to slow Jared Goff down. Go all out with the blitz, pressure him. That's number 1. Bad weather. That's number 2. This year, against Brian Flores, somebody who had his number throughout his career, against the blitz, no issue. 22 for 25 for 2 touchdowns and 278 yards, I believe. Right? Bad weather, no problem. Still efficient. Still doing his thing. Still shining. Right? So I think because he has took that step to be in that elite tier of quarterbacks whom, he might be. He just might be that guy. At least he has the most experience. Not named Patrick Mahomes. I mean, who else has more experience than Jared Goff? He played in the Super Bowl before, right? He played on 2 teams, 2 different systems. So all the defense that you can see, that's going to be pivotal. They can run the ball. They can win the games in any weather. They can run the ball. They can pass the ball. They can win in all three phases. I mean, it's too much. It's like a buffet. It's too much to eat over there. And they can do so much things with that creative play caller and Ben Johnson. I think he's going to win and he's going to go and get a job. I like the Lions and I ain't lying.
So I think you bring up some good points about the hesitations we had with them on the offensive side of the ball and their ability to get over that. Goff played very well in that game on Sunday. And it's interesting, like, we've seen it a lot too the last 2 weeks. Like, they put up 50 on the Titans, and Goff didn't even have to do that much, right? Like, they really do a good job of taking advantage of other teams' mistakes. That's what good teams do. My question, though, is without Hutchinson, can they get enough stops? As good of a job as they've done on the offensive side of the ball, I still have a lot of questions about this defense. And I understand they shut down Love. They did a great job in that game on Sunday, but we even said it. Jordan Love should not have played in that game, and the game really shifted because of a dumb mistake, that pick six. Look, I want to see what this team does on Sunday Night Football this week, going on the road to Houston against CJ Stroud and the Texans. We know that the Texans, they just played on Thursday Night Football, so they're going to have the rest advantage. That game is in Houston, in the Dome. I think Houston's going to put up some points on this Detroit defense, and we know whichever team that comes out of the AFC is going to be able to do that as well. And I just wonder, for Detroit, if you go up and against an elite defense like Kansas City in the Super Bowl, are you going to be able to outscore them? That's where I have my doubts. I want to see this Lions team prove they could get enough stops. And look, they got to an NFC Championship game last year, but this team should have gotten to the Super Bowl, and they choked the NFC Championship game away. I still need to see them prove that they could get the job done in a big game. I know Kansas City could do that, and that's why they're the favorites for me.
Yeah, look, the Chiefs got the pillars, right? They have the championship pillars, the quarterback, the defensive playmaker in Chris Jones that clearly watched the game last night and he's being guarded by two offensive linemen. He's literally his attention is opening things up for the other guys, and clearly the Lions are missing that with Aiden Hutchinson and all that. And that's where the X factor will come in for me and the difference where I could just be like, okay, I can understand that part of it, but I just think the Lions will. I just think the NFC is theirs. I feel like the Ravens are going to test the Chiefs' limits and Buffalo. So I think the Chiefs got more competition from those two guys, whereas I think the NFC is the Lions right now. Like I really do. I can say that comfortably. So I'm going to go with the Lions. All right, Zach. Let's go with offensive player of the year. Who are you going to go with there?
Yeah, well, I think for me, this was another one that was pretty easy. You got to give it to Derrick Henry, right? This guy has had a phenomenal year from start to finish. I was a little bit skeptical of the signing in the offseason. I thought Baltimore needed to prioritize some other things considering just how well they've run the ball. And I think Henry winning this award would be really justified if we see him be a difference maker in the playoffs and Baltimore, finally prove that they could get to a Super Bowl. But I will say, man, there aren't that many running backs I've watched in my years watching this game that I could say definitively are better than Derrick Henry. You could say Adrian Peterson. You could say LaDainian Tomlinson. But this guy is a Hall of Fame talent. We know the running back position has deteriorated in years past. The value of the position is not really as high as it's been, especially when you get into your early 30s like Derrick Henry is. But this guy is just unreal. He's putting the team on his back. It seems like every week he just has a huge run. We know what he did in Tennessee, but for him to be able to do that, especially at this age in Baltimore, has just been very impressive. For me, I think he's been the best skill position player in this league so far. And it's really no doubt that Derrick Henry would be my offensive player of the year if the season ended today.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for me, you look at what he's doing in a time where the running back position has been devalued, and I think he and Saquon Barkley are the centerpieces of a running back renaissance in the NFL today that we see. And I think at the age of 30, being on pace for 2,000 yards is incredible. I think we are talking about a traditional back that you just give him the ball. He can outrun your defense. He can run you over like a truck. He's not a guy that's like a gadget guy. He's not, the shiftiest guy. Just traditional ground and pound. It's going down, get out the way type of back. And clearly the value that he's brought to the Ravens offense is why they're going to be a tough team to beat come January. So I'm going to go with him. And Zach, let's go to the defensive player of the year. Who we going there?
Yeah, well, I think you got to stay in this division. Go with the Ravens' arch rival, Steeler. You got to go with T.J. Watt. His ability to just take over games is something I've never seen from a defensive player. What he did against the Giants in that Monday night game, he literally won the Steelers that game, forcing the fumble, forcing the turnover. Week 1 in Atlanta, he had a few big stops. I just think this guy is criminally underrated. I know he hasn't really had a ton of playoff success, and that's probably the reason why. But there's, as long as he stays on the field, the Steeler team wins. And that's the biggest testament I could give to a defensive player, especially a pass rusher. I think he's the best defensive player in the league by far. He would get my vote.
Yeah, look, Aiden Hutchinson was really on his way. I thought he had this award in the bag. I was ready. 7.5 sacks on the year. Unfortunately, a season-ending injury, and there's so much good defensive players to really just, stick with that and be like, all right, I was going to go there. We knew we was going to go there. Let's stay there. No, I can't, unfortunately, because there's too much good players. Fred Warner is in this category. TJ Watt is in this category. A lot of guys you can really go here. And I'm going to go with TJ Watt. I agree with you because I see his impact. Now, don't get me wrong. Okay. And this is where bias may come into play. Not because I like the Steelers. We all know I don't. But because I see the Steelers more. And I see the plays that TJ Watt is making because he's on prime time a little bit more. I mean, you're talking about the Jets game, prime time. We talking about the Cowboys game, prime time, right? You saw what he did week 1. Not prime time, but against a team that's playing on prime time in the Falcons, right? When he broke up that game and he was able to make game-winning plays from that game week 1 on. And we all know his impact. We all know when he's playing, that's the best player on the Steelers team in general. Literally. And when he's not playing, we see the losses accumulate. We see how this team is different. We all know Mike Tomlin's vision of winning ball games is winning with the defense. And TJ Watt gives Mike Tomlin the opportunity to do just that. And that's why he's my defensive player of the year. And the Giants, okay? I didn't forget about the Giants. Prime time, okay? He won that game, made the game-sealing sack fumble recovery. So, yeah, I'm going to go with TJ Watt. Zach, let's move on to the next category here. Let's go with Coach of the Year. Zach, who we going with for Coach of the Year?
Yeah, well, this is where for me it started to get tough. I think there are a ton of guys that really have a case, but I'm going to go with Sean Payton. And the reason for that is if the season ended today, the Broncos would make the playoffs. And I don't think anyone could have seen that coming. Now, in the second half, if they don't end up doing that, I'll probably move away from this one. But I just feel like when you look at this Broncos team, like there isn't a ton of top-notch talent. Like Bo Nix has had a really good rookie year, but he was the consensus, fifth best quarterback in this class. Cortland Sutton is a very good player, but I don't think anyone is categorizing him as some top 10 wide receiver. Their defense is very good. Surtain is a big reason for that. But besides him, do they really have a lot of household names on that side of the ball? I just feel like this Broncos team, most people expected them to be like a 5-6 win team. And the fact that Bo Nix is ahead of schedule, the fact that they're in the playoffs, they're winning games right now, you got to go with Sean Payton for me. And I think guys like Kevin O'Connell, he has a legit case for this award. Dan Quinn has a legit case for this award. There are a lot of guys, but I just think for me, the Broncos roster it's really not anything special. And coaching and the hiring of Vance Joseph is a big reason why Denver is in that category. And coaching is the biggest reason why I think they're good. So I would give it to Sean Payton.
Yeah, that's a very interesting pick. I think he's in the, he's in the tier. I don't know if I would go top tier, but I definitely can understand your points. Ushering in a rookie quarterback. Not to mention the job he did with Russell Wilson last year. That was more, better than what it was before, even though last year don't count. I do think they are definitely a well-coached football team, and the fact that Bo Nix was playing well prior to last week was a good sign. That went under the radar as well. So, I do believe that that's a decent pick. I think there's a lot of guys you could have went here. Jim Harbaugh is one of those guys. We all know that he brought a identity to the football team. A culture shift is happening in Los Angeles right now, and he's doing what he normally does, and it's 1 year so far. So he's definitely in here. I almost went there. I almost went Mike Tomlin, and I'm not a Mike Tomlin guy, but like I said, I never was a hater. I just differ with certain philosophies of his, and I think those philosophies is why he's not number one. He would have been my number two. And you could send that to Zay because he thinks that I had this epiphany with Mike Tomlin. It's nothing personal. He was my runner up, and the main reason why he didn't win it was because I mentioned it last week that there were some game management decisions that cost his team wins, or maybe it didn't cost them a win in that game, but I noticed it. And if I notice it, that's not a good thing. So but I do think him pivoting back to Wilson is just gangster. It saved the season, even though they were 4-2. And those kind of executive decisions really resonate with me. So I had him as a runner up. I'm going to go with Dan Quinn for the win. I'm going to go with him as the coach of the year. I think for me, you're talking about him taking over a job that wasn't the most attractive job because of its reputation, right? It kind of reminds me of Dan Campbell taking the Lions job, not known for a good reputation, messing up guys' careers. Barry Sanders retiring, Calvin Johnson retiring, but he changed the culture and has put forth a consistent NFC contender. I can see the same thing happening here with the Commanders. They have a rookie quarterback, no problem, 7-2. What it do? The hiring of Cliff Kingsbury has paid due, right? So at the end of it all, I can always tell when a team is well coached, and I knew that from the preseason. I knew it when I saw Jaden Daniels in the preseason, ran for a first down, got hit, and immediately looked up at Dan Quinn because he's coaching him to slide and not take unnecessary hits, even though at times he can because he's reckless a little bit in that area. He's still a very good quarterback in MVP consideration on my list, and that's why I got to go with Dan Quinn for the win, coach of the year.
Yeah, I think this could be the toughest market because there were so many good options. There's no denying the fact that Quinn has this team at 7-2. And look, we always talk about how important the staff and the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator positions are. If you're a head coach, you have to get those hires right. And that decision to hire Cliff Kingsbury as the OC and the ownership, credit to them for egging out enough money to pay Cliff in order to get him in Washington. Like that could be the most important coordinator hire that we've seen from this past offseason, and it's paying dividends on the field. Look, Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury, that's a match made in heaven. I think Jaden has really played well, and a lot of that is because he's comfortable with Cliff's system. It's like a college. It's similar to a college system, just getting your receivers open. I think that's a great match, and I'm going to be curious next year because we think Cliff is probably going to be a head coach next year, right? Like I'm wondering who would hire him, the impact Washington that makes on Washington, but there's no doubt he's been a great hire, and he's going to be a guy I think again that a lot of teams are going to be looking at as a head coach candidate for next year.
All right, Zach, we get into the final one here, the MVP. And Zach, I want to do it a little bit different than we did the other ones. If you want to give some runner-ups that's worth mentioning here that literally just fell short of being the guy that you chose for your midseason MVP, if you could give me one or two guys, the mic is yours, and then go with your guy.
Sure. The first name that comes to mind for me is Jared Goff. I think he deserves to be in this conversation. He's had a great year. I think he knows what exactly he has to do in order to put this Lions team in a position to succeed. Like he doesn't have to put the team on his back. He just doesn't make mistakes. And I just think this situation, it's funny. And I think I said this before the season, like I thought the Rams were a perfect spot for Goff because he had the excellent coach with McVay. He had great talent around him, and it worked. Like they got to a Super Bowl. But when you look at this Lions team, like the offensive line, we know how important that is for Goff because he doesn't do great under pressure. He has a great play caller. He has great weapons. And I don't think anyone's calling him some top 5 elite quarterback, but he just does enough to win. He knows how to win football games. And he's had a great season so far for Detroit. Even though like he hasn't put up great numbers, he's put up better numbers in years past, but he just does enough to win. Jared Goff is a guy I heavily considered. And look, I understand it hasn't been a vintage Patrick Mahomes season, but his team is 8-0. And I just wonder, Will, like if the Chiefs go like 15-1, 14-2, 13-3 or 14-3, 15-2, one of these guys is going to get an award, whether it's Patrick Mahomes winning MVP, whether it's Andy Reid winning Coach of the Year, and he's never won Coach of the Year. Chris Jones, does he get in the Defensive Player of the Year mix? I just have a hard time. Like, if Kansas City has an all-time great regular season, I think they're going to get recognized for it. I just don't know who exactly that would be. Now, the MVP for me came down to one or two guys. It's Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. It's neck and neck. I think you could make a reasonable case for either choice. What I keep coming back to, though, is I think Josh Allen, this has been his best year because even though they traded for Amari Cooper, you're seeing that he has the ability to make his weapons around him better. That was at least a concern for me after they traded Diggs. I thought long-term, getting rid of Diggs was the right move. I thought he was a guy that was declining, clearly not the player he once was. But I thought it would take Buffalo a little bit of time to adjust and find the weapons to replace him. And Josh Allen has really turned Shakir into a top-notch wide receiver. He's had a phenomenal year. I think as Amari Cooper is with this team for longer, he's going to make an impact. I don't look, I'm not the biggest Keon Coleman fan. I think he's a flawed player, but he's made plays. And Josh Allen, he just wouldn't let the Bills lose on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. So I would give him the slight edge as my midseason MVP choice over Lamar Jackson, just because I think he's so valuable to his team. If you take Josh Allen away from this Bills team, they're an average team at best. And when you look at Lamar Jackson, he's had a great year. But I also wonder, too, we know there are actual humans that vote on this award. It's the media. Do they say, oh, Lamar, we gave him the award last year. He let us down in the playoffs. We're not going to give him the MVP again, even though he could be fully deserving of it. We just don't want him. We don't want to get fooled again. And we don't want him to let us down again in the playoffs. I think Henry being the offensive player of the year could probably hurt his case as well. So I'm going to lean Josh Allen here. Lamar has put up fantastic numbers. I think he's right in the race. Also, the fact they played and the Ravens blew out the Bills. Lamar blew out. He balled out in that game. But I just think that when you look at that, the fact that he won the award last year, he's already won it twice. I just think they're actual humans voting for this award. They're going to get a little bit fatigued. I think this is Josh Allen's time, and he would be the guy I would give the midseason award to right now.
Yeah, I mean, this was a tough one. I probably switched in my head multiple times. It's really a tough award to give out right now. Definitely this past week, I factored in, because it was always going to be down to the wire, but this week was definitely critical in me picking a guy to be the midseason MVP. I just want to give you two guys that was really close to making my number one. We can begin with Jaden Daniels. I think what he's doing with Washington is the most impressive story in the NFL, having won 7 of their first 9 games for the first time since 1996. You have to credit the coaching staff, of course, but I do believe that Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFC. And I think Jared Goff is making the case to be that as well. But Jaden Daniels offers the rushing upside that Jared Goff does not. So he's all around more versatile than Jared Goff. And I also think he had that signature MVP moment last week with that Hail Mary. And that definitely factored in. I understand it could be optics, but you won the game. You won the game because of the throw that you made. And that's going to factor in there, of course. And it comes down to, I agree, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen for me. And I think for me, the reason why I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson to be runner-up, and it's close, is mainly because I do believe that Josh Allen, let's make one thing clear. Both of these guys are valuable. If you were to subtract Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, even though they got Derrick Henry, they still will win games, but they wouldn't be as dynamic. Same thing with Josh Allen. They probably wouldn't win a lot of games if you subtract Josh Allen, right? And look, I'm breaking the rules here by having Lamar Jackson this high anyway. Because normally, the way how I look at MVP, you have to be the best player on your football team by a mile. Because you cannot be the MVP of the league if you're not the MVP of your team. And Derrick Henry has been playing really equally good as Lamar Jackson. However, we've seen Lamar Jackson win 2 MVPs already. So we know that he's not being carried by the addition of Derrick Henry because he won 2 already. And we know Derrick Henry has been, at least on my list, on 2 of my MVP finalists, over the last couple of years. So we know he's not being carried by Lamar Jackson. What you have is an equal partnership that is mutual, benefiting both of these guys together. And thus you have a offense that cannot be stopped right now at this very moment. So we'll see if you talk about the Chiefs and who could get the credit. Well, we'll see how the media gives out the credit when you have two players that equally could be in this discussion right now. Do they go offensive player of the year with Derrick Henry? Do they go MVP Lamar Jackson? Or, we'll see how they pan that out. But Josh Allen is number one for me, and it's close, like I said. But to me, him continuing to be explosive while limiting the turnovers is why I have him here. And I do believe that, trading in some of that explosiveness for positive percentage throws could be a gift and a curse. Sure, we don't have as much highlight reels as before, but we have lower interceptions, thus winning more games. And winning games matter in the MVP discussion. The fact that the AFC East is probably over, right? It's going to be over by Thanksgiving. You have to factor that in as well. And the touchdown to interception ratio. He has 2 interceptions on the year. It should only be 1. Coleman literally had a ball go through his hands on a slant that should have been a wide open touchdown on a slant route. So it really should be 1 interception. I'm just impressed with how Josh Allen has been able to elevate his guys. I always knew he could. I believed in him. I always thought that he was Patrick Mahomes S. He just wasn't able to get over that Mahomes hump because of his team. So I'm not surprised that he's able to elevate his guys even when they traded Stephon Diggs. So he's here at number 1 for me. And Lamar Jackson and Daniels is my runner-up.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. We've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.